I was told that he had a gastric cancer and that it had metastasized everywhere. Now, as a doctor now, I don't know where everywhere is. I don't think I'll ever find out. I know that it went to the liver and some other places, but it was everywhere. He went downhill very quickly, as in from diagnosis to death in 4 weeks. I was there when he died, having had not much, and I have talked about this in a couple of episodes ago with my first experiences of death. I had almost no experiences of death before this point. So it was probably the second or third person I'd literally watched die. But the point that I'm getting at is I struggled a lot with this, mainly because, and I won't go into the details, but our relationship was very difficult and not good, to put it vaguely. I don't think I enjoyed having him in my life really, but it was a weird situation where I did and I didn't. So that's as much as I'm going to go into that. But afterwards I felt very confused and I did not know how to handle my emotions. I therefore became extremely dissociated, and for those of you who have never felt dissociation, I'm trying to think what it could be like, because most of you probably will have felt it but not realised, and you might have felt it for a very short period of time. It's like, you know, when you feel either really sleep deprived or really shocked or really, drunk maybe, but it's like the worst experience I have ever had. You don't feel like you are, it sounds kind of psychotic, but you don't feel like you're in your body. Or for me, the worst one was, I felt like I was in my body, but I felt like that cartoon, which I can't remember what it's called, but the cartoon where the people are sat in the person's head, the emotions are sat in the person's head, but they're not like doing anything. So I felt like the person sat inside of my head, but I had weirdly it wasn't like I had no control over what I was doing. It was like my body was on autopilot and I was saying stuff, but in my head I was like, how the hell am I saying this? Like, I don't understand what's happening. So that was so distressing for me, and almost definitely one of the worst mental health symptoms I've had. Worse than the lack of motivation, because there are things that can make you feel better from that. You know, you can get like an endorphin rush from doing loads of exercise. With this, it was kind of just stuck with me, and the more I thought about it, the worse it got, and the worse it got, the more I thought about it and the more stressed I was about it. I am much better now. It's almost not there, but I really struggled with that, and that followed me through into F1. So that started in 5th year. I think my stepdad died in 5th year, like February, March. Then I was still on Roaccutane at that time, and then I was on elective, and I can't remember whether I stopped the Roaccutane before or after elective, but I remember feeling like shit over elective, so I think it might have been after. So that is 5th year kind of summarised. In 5th year was great, like it wasn't just like that, I'm just talking about how that linked into everything that was going on in my life, in terms of linked into F1 and how it was the worst career year of my life. As a result of all of this, I am not going to lie, I didn't really attend placement. I hid my feelings. I just wanted to get through and start working, essentially, because money was sort of an issue, and I was still working as a HCA. I didn't want to be working as a HCA. I kind of felt sounds bad, but I kind of felt at that point a little bit overqualified. I was kind of like wanting to get out of the gates and start working as a doctor, and it was kind of frustrating for me to watch people do the job that I wanted to do and not be able to be involved in that because I was working as HCA. So yeah, that is 5th year. So then obviously F1 applications, now they started actually, I want to say before 5th year, but I really can't remember now. 4th year, 5th year. F1 application, basically I didn't really feel good enough, and I remember starting medical school and being literally like a straight A star, A student in A levels anyway. I wasn't in GCSE, and I remember going from that to being like top of your year to being like satisfactory mediocre. That then, that's a bit of a shitter, isn't it? But it follows you through, and I remember applying to F1 and being like, I just didn't really feel good enough. Like, I was like, everybody's going to be applying and getting really good places, and I'm just like average. But my educational supervisor constantly told me that it didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, and to be honest, it really doesn't. So if you're a 5th year or 4th year or medical student worrying about that, it really doesn't, unless you want to become like do you know what? I was going to say no, unless you want to become a cardiothoracic surgeon, but even then, I don't think it matters. Like, as long as you go to a place or you show an interest in that like field, you might not have a cardiothoracic specialty in that hospital that you apply to, but you can still go and do like extracurricular stuff. Anyway, in the grand scheme of things, it does not matter. So I applied to Peninsula. I wanted to stay in the southwest area. It's like anywhere above Bristol to me is like north and scary, so I'm kind of staying away from there. And I am from Cheltenham originally, so yeah, actually, to be fair, anywhere above there is scary and north, so like Birmingham onwards. But I applied to Peninsula. I actually had a weird dream about starting at F1 and F2 in Exeter, so I actually applied there, which I know sounds really crazy, but that's what I did. Maybe I'm a bit crazy. I actually got a place for Exeter in F1, and then I think it was Barnstaple. I don't remember, but Barnstaple for 2nd year. I ended up staying for 2 years in Exeter because of everything that was going on. I actually managed to, I don't know what you'd call it now, apply for a transfer. They were basically really great, and I had everything set up in Exeter. Like, I had my counselling, my CBT even going on, and had my doctor and everything going on here. So I basically said, like, it's going to be so much mental, like I was in the midst of a full, I would call, breakdown. For me to have to pick up my life and move it somewhere else when I was going through that was kind of quite a scary thought. So thankfully my application was successful. I was probably the only person to have their application transferred. It's almost unheard of for that to happen unless you have severe extenuating circumstances, which I think I did. Anyway, they managed to create some jobs for me. I was very needed in those jobs. Like, it wasn't like I was supernumerary or anything, but well, in peds I was. But as a result, I ended up, let's stop there. That's a different part. So, why did I find the transfer from 5th year to F1 so hard? Because I did. That was probably, the worst bit of F1 for me was the start of it. And that's probably where you guys are right now if you are an F1 watching this, or next year if you're a 5th year watching this for next year. So one of my biggest things was that I was so unprepared. Like, I don't know how you can even prepare yourself for becoming a doctor. I think the reason why I talked about 5th year was because I think it starts in 5th year. I did not prepare in 5th year. I flopped around, kind of not really going to placement, not really learning, like, because of everything that was going on, I wasn't really learning, like, how to be a doctor. And I think if you've been prepared, you will probably not suffer as much as I did. But I started F1 with, I would say, full-blown depression. That was only due to get worse. So yeah, I felt very unprepared going from 5th year to F1. Mainly, I think because I ignored everything that was going on in my life, especially the depression. And another factor was I went straight, literally from not being a doctor at all. I mean, somebody's got to do it, right? But I went straight from being a 5th year to going straight into surgical nights. They weren't like too busy, but I was on my own. I had no idea what I was doing. Somebody said, I had like jobs to do a fluid review, and I was like, how the fuck do I do a fluid review? I don't even know what that is. So there was loads of stuff that I didn't know how to do. I thought everybody was dying. Like, everybody that was unwell, I thought, oh my God, they're going to die, like, right now. So, I mean, that's quite terrifying. And surgery was completely unforgiving for me. Like, it was very intense. It was very busy. We often finished late. We were regularly understaffed. And I had I would call it moderate anxiety. As a result, I constantly worried about patients. I would go in after work because once actually, that only happened once. I forgot things, and I think all of this could have been avoided by being honest with my supervisors and, to be honest with myself, by basically saying I was struggling. But it took until I think about 8 months in, 6 or 8 months in, before anybody, like, it was even picked up. I got through the 4 months of upper GI, no one really noticed. I think over the time it was getting worse though, let's be honest. And then I went into ED. Now, ED is very heavily senior led and supervised. So when I say ED, I mean emergency department. Now, it's very, very, there's a lot of consultants there all the time, at least one anyway. So my sort of depressive symptoms at that point were noticed and were starting to probably come to a head and start to probably piss people off. Like, the main comments that I got were, appears disinterested was a very common word. And yeah, apparently I just didn't really seem interested in things, and it's really hard for me to like look back on it now because I was in the midst of it, but apparently I'm very different now. So I was very closed off. I wouldn't make eye contact. I didn't really want to do anything. I had no motivation. And I remember saying, and this is probably what started off all of the treatment for me, was I remember saying to my educational supervisor, who was a surgeon, because you keep your educational supervisor that you start with for the whole year. He said, where are all these comments coming from? And I said, I remember the sentence very well. I said, I don't even want to be alive, let alone be at work. Now, this was at a time where I was getting more than once a day suicidal thoughts. I never acted on them, but it was a regular, like, something bad would happen, I would jump straight to that conclusion. But that was a very scary moment for my supervisor, I think, because he was like, I don't know how to deal with this. Anyway, as a result of that, my educational supervisor changed, which was probably for the better for both of us, me and my old educational supervisor. I ended up keeping the same ES, I'm just going to call him ES for 2 years, which is very unusual, or nearly 2 years, 1.5, which is very unusual because most people get one every year. Also, my ES was from a specialty that I'd never worked in, but she was like probably the only thing that got me through. Now, if you're watching this, you know who you are. This person deserves a medal because they had to put up with me and my mental health issues. But probably the only reason I managed to get through was this person. If I didn't have that person, I don't know what I would be doing. But they were assigned to me because they were very involved, they were very caring, and I think they were, I mean, I don't know, but I think they were kind of well known for being more of a supportive ES than others. So this person became my second mum, essentially. Like, she looked after me, she knew about my personal life, she knew about all my treatments, literally she knew everything about my life. But she taught me, and she was kind of like a counsellor, I suppose, but she taught me how to open up, as well as all my other treatments. She taught me how to open up, she taught me how to be more honest about my mental health, because I was very like, I kept it all inside, like nothing came out. I was like a brick wall, like no emotions would come in, no emotions would go out, or they would. The emotions were there, I would not show them. So anyway, that happened. I can't even remember how I got onto that, but for the first time in my life, at the end of F1, I was told that I needed to do an extra 4 months of F1. Now, when I say the first time in my life, this is the first time in my life that I'd ever, in inverted commas, if you're not watching, you're listening, failed. Because I had never academically failed, and it kind of felt like a failure to me. I was always, sounds so at myself, but I'd passed mainly all of my exams. I'd never really struggled academically. I'd never ever been held back from stuff. If I'd done badly in a test, I could always, it was usually because I hadn't like worked hard enough, so I could do it again and it was fine. So this is the first time that, I know it's not necessarily academic, but this is the first time that I was held back in life. All of my peers progressed on to F2. I remained in F1 for an extra 4 months. Now, the end of that 4 months came, and I was then put in front of another ARCP, which is annual panel that you go to every year. And well, not necessarily a panel, but in F1 and F2 it was a panel. And especially for the more difficult cases like myself, we would go, in our case, not necessarily us, but our case would go in front of a panel. Anyway, at that point, I was told that I might have to redo the whole year. And I was like, no, I want to redo just 4 months and then progress. And by that point, I think I'm really trying to drag it back through my memory. At that point, I'd had a lot of treatment. I think I started on antidepressants. I was seeing my GP on at least a monthly basis to talk about my medication. I was doing CBT sessions once a week for quite a long time, for a few months. And at the end of F1, I did feel like I needed the extra 4 months. I agreed with that. However, when it got to the end of that 4 months and they said, you may have to do another year, I was like, hell no, please don't make me do that. I did not feel at that point, having gone through all of my treatment, I was in a much better place. I was stable on my medication, my mental health was stable, I was getting the feedback from all of my colleagues had completely changed to positive rather than not everything, but a lot of things being negative, and things were starting to look up. The main thing that was affected throughout all of this depressive anxiety period was my social interactions with people. My medical competence was never affected. I never had any sort of issues with, oh, she doesn't know how to be a doctor. It was mainly around communication and my social interactions. And I tell you what, I've come such a long way. Like, I'm making eye contact with you right now. And I think YouTube has helped in some way, and podcasting, but I think I wouldn't have been able to do that if I wasn't in a good place. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about what the depression and the anxiety felt like. If you don't know, because admitting that you have a problem is one of the biggest things that you will need to do to help yourself. Otherwise, you're just going to crash and burn like I did. You don't want that. So one of the biggest things for me was the constant negative thoughts. Everything was negative in my head. That would obviously resonate out of my body and into the external world, because everything I was thinking and saying and the way I was behaving was negative. My motivation was almost zero. Like, how I managed to get out of bed and go to work, I do not know. But I do have this weird ability to just get up and do stuff. Like, it's like a super power. So my sleep was affected. I had a lot of early waking. I struggled to get to sleep because of anxiety. My heart would go really fast, and if I woke up in the middle of the night, I would really struggle to go back to sleep. My eating was all over the place. Like, you name it, a depressive symptom or an anxious symptom, I had it. I struggled to get out of bed. I was napping a lot. Just all of them. Mood swing, emotion, like I wasn't able to handle my emotions. And like I said, that really affected you can imagine all of that and trying to learn how to be a new doctor, trying to engage with people, work a stressful job, whilst having all of that going on in your head, not sleeping, not eating properly, struggling to exercise and be happy in general. So, do you know what? This might be one episode because I'm only at 40 minutes, which is quite a surprise. But I want to talk about how I got out of it, because that I have touched on a couple of times, and obviously it's where I am now. And I think one of the main things that helped me get out of it was, the biggest thing was recognising that I had a problem and accepting treatment and going through all of this treatment, because it took me a long time to accept that, probably close to a year. And had I actually accepted help or actually recognised that I had a problem, I probably wouldn't have gone as low as I did. The second thing is having loads and loads and loads of support. I think through F1 and F2 in particular, and in training programs, you get so much support. So you're in a really good place. They really want to look after you, especially as an F1, because they know you're new and baby. They are sometimes it felt like they were being not cruel, but they weren't, they were kind of being mean to me or picking on me, and obviously that was some of the depression talking, but because they held me back. But I was like, the reason why I said the word cruel was because I'm like, they were kind of being cruel to be kind, I needed that. I needed being held back to develop and learn and be at the appropriate level that I needed to be at. After I'd finished the year of F1, I don't think I was ready to be an F2. I had a lot, let's talk about my support. So there is so much support available to you as an F1 and an F2 and a training doctor. I think it definitely, when you're a locum, if you struggle with mental health and have things going on, then maybe being a locum is not the best for you, because there is barely any help or any support for locums. You don't have a supervisor. You're kind of left out in the ether on your own to sort of fend for yourself. I'm sure if you were working as a bank locum rather than an agency locum, that might be quite different because you're in one place, or if you're working as a trust grade, different story. But as a agency locum, I am free to the wind. I'm just, no one is looking after me. Like, there might be people following me up academically and, let's say, career-wise, I can't think of the word, but nobody is following me up in terms of a psychosocial support system. So the support that I had in F1, I had my ES, my CS, my clinical supervisor, who I would have they knew about my situation, and therefore I would have quite regular meetings with them, how I was getting on, etc, etc. I had foundation program director meetings, and the foundation I can't remember the name of them, coordinator. I had very close liaisons with her. I saw occupational health fairly regularly at the start, and then it changed. On occasion I would get, I think I had a week off work at one point when the stress got too much. So I had a lot of appointments and a lot of therapy. I had weekly support, weekly CBT for, I think it was like 20 weeks, so it was quite a long time. I was also on medications. I did a lot of reflecting, but after putting in all of this hard work, another thing that really helped was time, and also just finally believing in myself. So that sounds really corny, but I basically got to a point where I was like, I'm ready to move forwards, and the fact that I believed in myself, not in like an arrogant way, like I'm really amazing when, I was maybe not amazing, that I think really reassured people that I was ready, and the way I was handling discussions was different, and I had more confidence in myself. And if you have confidence in yourself and you really believe that you should progress and that you are ready to progress, and that's backed up in evidence, then the confidence really shines through. One of the things that occupational health restricted me on was that I wasn't allowed to do out of hours. So that was no night shifts. I think I didn't do on-call shifts at the height of it, and my locuming hours were also restricted. I wasn't allowed to locum. Now, this was quite a big stressor for me because money was a stressor, and I was on the very basic 9 to 5 income, which was 1,600 take home a month, and that didn't really seem to be, it would just made ends meet, and that was it. So I eventually got to a point where I was allowed to locum. I think it was 10 hours a week, or I can't remember now, something like that. But that very much helped, but that took time, and also proving to them that I could handle doing extra work, essentially. But the two take-home things from that are, number one, that I accepted help and I went to all of my appointments. I had lots of help, but also that I opened up as a person. This sounds very airy-fairy, but it's so important. And if you're struggling in F1 or as a doctor in general, or just in general with depression, opening up and having a support network around you and actually sharing your issues with people is so important. Like, I would not have gotten through what I got through on my own, and the support was so necessary, so helpful, but it also helped me to open up and become a more reflective and introspective person, and also just be able to work on myself. Keeping it all inside and hiding it from people is only going to make it worse. It's only going to escalate, and then you may end up doing something, you regret, or I don't want to catastrophize here, but basically getting to a point where you can't work, which has happened to some people and could have happened to me, or being, doing something very wrong medically that it questions your fitness to practice. Stop it before it gets that far. That's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't need to get that far. And I think mental health is very much on the, knowledge about mental health is very much on the rise and is more talked about. However, I still have some issues with how it's managed and talked about, but we can talk about that in another episode. But let's talk about how I manage now, because my mental health is great, and it has been for 2 years. My mental health has been at a very good level. Obviously it has its peaks and troughs, because everybody's physical, mental health, life has its peaks and troughs. You can't expect it to always be happy or always be neutral, and also always be sad. Like, if you think life's never going to get better, trust me, it does. Okay, so think about that. So how do I manage now? I am still on, I'll be honest, I'm still on medication. I'm on an SSRI, and to be honest, who isn't? Most people are. You just don't know it. It doesn't affect my ability to work or function or do anything. It actually has made my life better. Now there is some question from people about the efficacy and how much of a placebo it is. I'm very open-minded, let's put it that way, but I do believe that it works, and it's been shown to work. I think everything does have a placebo effect, even a small amount, so there is going to be some placebo, and obviously I had therapy as well as medication, so who knows, but I am slowly, very, very slowly, titrating my medications down by 25 milligrams every few months. Like, it's so slow. I severely do not want a relapse at all, because I'm doing so well, and I know so much about my mental health now, and yes, I still do things to damage my mental health, in terms of maybe I don't exercise as much as I should, or I don't eat as well as I could sometimes, or things like that, but we're all learning, okay? We're all learning. Another thing that I have, and this is obviously not accessible to everybody, but I do have a private counsellor, therapist, that I used to see every week, but now I see once every 2 weeks. I personally pay for that, but to be honest, if you're not going to invest in your own mental health, then the NHS does offer free services, but I wanted more of an ongoing, regular thing, and they only offer short-term solutions short to medium term solutions to get you out of a sort of acute crisis. I wanted something that was going to help me prevent any further relapses, and to be honest, the monetary investment is worth it in my opinion, especially as it's only once every 2 weeks now. I cut that down after fuel started going up to £2 per litre. I said, can we kind of reduce the amount, and also reduce the amount of times we're meeting per month. And also I was kind of feeling in a good place, so I didn't really feel like I had enough to talk about in 1 week. And thirdly, my openness to mental health has changed so much. Would I have spoken so openly on a podcast, on YouTube, about my mental health 1 or 2 years ago? Absolutely hell no. But look at me now. Like I said at the start, I'm not doing this for attention. I'm not doing this to be like, wow, look at me, I'm so amazing. I'm doing this to help you guys, somebody watching this, somebody's friend who, I don't know, you might say, go and watch this, because I was there, I was once you, and I have gotten out of it. So I just wanted to talk about how much I struggled, and the fact that you may or will struggle a lot in F1. Some people might see me now and think, really? Was she depressed? Like, I can't believe that. I'm a very outgoing person and very sociable and extremely different to how I was 2, 3, 4 years ago. So my openness to mental health has changed significantly. I didn't even want to admit to myself that I had a problem, let alone admitting it to the world. And maybe I'll get some hate from this and be like, oh, you're not like good enough to be a doctor or whatever. I think you'd be surprised at how many people in general have mental health problems and you just don't know about it. But also 25% of doctors in their life, at some point in their career, will have a mental health problem. So what are you going to do? Get rid of 25% of healthcare professionals? I think not. Another thing that you need to think about, and has really been on my mind recently, is how shit the system is. So the NHS is very much struggling. We all know that. Don't burden yourself with the fact that it's struggling. Think that you can't change the system, but this is why we're giving lots of doctors, I don't want to call it resilience training, because it kind of sounds like, oh, you need to carry on and power through. No, it's if you get something, you recognise, like have an issue, you recognise it, deal with it appropriately, and how do you get back on your feet from that? It's not like, oh, I'm going to ignore that problem because I'm resilient. Anyway, that's why we're doing all this talk about mental health and resilience stuff and supporting junior doctors in particular, wellness stuff, and that's kind of why I started my channel as well, because of my issues with mental health and trying to normalise it and get through it. I felt like the only person in F1 in particular that had mental health issues. I felt like the only one. I felt alone. I felt like no one else was suffering, everyone else was doing amazingly. That's not the case at all. In fact, that's very much the opposite. Everyone was struggling to more or less severe degrees than other people. Everybody's got their issues, you just don't know about it because it's not announced. They're not going to tell you. Nobody knew, apart from my housemates and my supervisors. Nobody really knew about all the stuff that was going on in my life. So that is maybe something that could change. Maybe there could be more openness around issues in F1 and F2, rather than keeping it kind of secret. I'm not saying, oh, you know, people, the supervisors go around going, oh, by the way, Joan, did you know that Dawn has depression? You might want to go talk to her. I'm not saying do that, but I'm saying it might be good to have like a space to be a bit more open about these things, because nobody is going to talk in a 30 group session about their mental health. Like, it's just not going to happen. Anyway, that's me having spoken for an hour about it. If you do want to speak to me about it, then please send me an email or an Instagram message or a Facebook message. I don't really respond to my emails that quickly, but it's contact@diariesofadoctor.com. But the Instagram and the Facebook messages I will respond to a lot more quickly. Obviously, if this is just for like general chat, and if you need medical help or you're having an acute mental health crisis or suicidal thoughts, please go and seek help, because I am not a mental health professional, and also I'm not going to respond very quickly. So please seek appropriate help for that. But I'm here to chat about how I got through any issues and how you guys can get through issues too, in just being a doctor or in life. Some of you who may actually know me as a person may not actually know that story. So that might be a learning curve for you. You can ask me about it if you want. I don't really mind anymore. I'm very open about it. So the reason why you may know me and we might not have talked about it before is because, like, why would I? It's in the past. If it comes up, we may have spoken about it. But I'm not going to go out of my way to be like, oh, by the way, did you know that 2 years ago I was having a mental health crisis and was thinking about killing myself every day? No, we're not going to talk about that. But I'm more than happy to talk about it now. So anyway, I hope you sort of enjoyed that. I hope you found it useful at least. I am here if you need to leave any comments or anything or send a message. I would appreciate no hate comments, please. That would be great. And I will speak to you in the next podcast. Thanks for watching. Bye.